Well, I'm PhocusWire Editor-in-Chief Mitra Sorrells, and I am joined today by Nina Wittkamp. She is partner at McKinsey, and Evgeni Kochman, associate partner at McKinsey. Welcome to you both.
Thanks for having us, Mitra.
Thank you, Mitra. Looking forward.
So we are talking today about the travel industry and the opportunities that you are seeing now for the industry. Let's start, first of all, about where you see some of both the opportunities and the challenges as we start to look ahead.
Yes, great. And there's really a lot of good news that we can share on this front. In general, we see a lot of year-on-year growth in terms of funding into the travel startup sector as really good news, not only for growth, but also for innovation. If we look at it from a time perspective, startups have been a significant contributor to industry growth in general. If you look at the couple of years before the pandemic, the biggest players, say the top 5 in hospitality, business travel, trip experiences, have contributed about 15 to 20% of overall category growth. So that's really remarkable if you compare the size of these companies. It's really substantial, since these players are getting typically less than 1% of overall industry revenue and funding. So it definitely supports, for the funding to, accelerate growth and continue innovation. So generally really good news, not only for the startups, but also for the rest of the sector. And, looking ahead, we'd like to see a lot more diversity in the funding as such, from a geographic perspective, from the categories, and also the types of players. There's still a lot of, say, legacy in the travel sector that is being optimized, which is great. But we've not seen as much real disruption and changing of the system. A lot of it was focused on just doing better, creating, better experience, but it was the experience from, a few decades ago. So there's still a lot of room for growth, but also real disruption in the actual models, business models, and types of players that we're seeing.
So let's just talk a bit more about that then. When you start to look at the future of funding, can you give us some predictions, kind of look in your crystal ball, tell us what you expect to see?
Yeah, it's always interesting to look into the crystal ball. If we take a step back, there are basically 3 scenarios which you can think about. I think the first scenario is what we call the incumbent-driven consolidation. So if you think about investments flowing more and more into category leaders, this would mean that large startups become even larger. And it could be even more and more difficult for smaller startups to acquire innovation and actually dominate the pack, so to say. And what it would lead to is a little bit of less innovation in the industry. I think we see some tendencies for this in the overall funding consolidation across a couple of categories where you really want to establish a category leader, and the category leader is emerging. But I think it would be a shame if we would really miss out on all of the broad innovation in the industry. The second option is the other way around, right? Rather an emerging of new niche startups. And the good thing is we have observed that already in a couple of verticals. So if you look at hospitality, for example, there was a reverse trend going away from category leaders more towards a more fragmented, diversified landscape of startups that have been funded. Right. The idea would be that it would drive new innovation, right? And would drive new possibilities to really improve the customer experience and the ways we work in the industry. The challenge on the other side for industry participants, if we think about the travel corporates, would be that they need to deal with a more complex ecosystem, right? So this would definitely be a trade-off to consider. Nevertheless, we see definitely a possibility to deconsolidate for more innovation. And the last piece is what would be if we believe that the funding growth would just continue? And this is what we've called the golden 20s for travel startup funding. I think currently it looks like a scenario that seems unlikely, because we see a lot of startups under scrutiny with regards to profitability, resulting in layoffs, especially this year and at the end of last year. But nevertheless, it could be that after a short period of recalibration, basically a strong rebound occurs and the industry really continues to fuel growth and fuel funding. This would lead to an even more colorful landscape, as the big ones will get bigger, but also there will be a lot of innovation. So ideally, this would be definitely something we would like to see.
Certainly a lot there for us to be keeping our eyes on. And finally, as we are preparing to wrap up, certainly we have industry stakeholders and investors possibly listening right now. What would you recommend to them?
Well, for me, I think the big theme is really collaboration. I think we've seen a bit of a them and us dynamic in some places where, the startups were seen as a disruptor, but at the same time, many startups have been held back by legacy structures in the industry. And I think there's a lot more value that can be captured in, established companies and startups work together more closely, get access to data, to technology, to really work out, and move beyond the point solutions. I think that's an important one to look at going forward. Of course, that ultimately also means there's probably more corporate investment in the startup space, or more early involvement in the funnel when it comes to collaboration. As we all know, it's a quite complex landscape, so tackling access to better data, customer insights, processes, tech, I think is key. I think there's only very few sectors you can disrupt, in isolation. So we've probably only scratched the surface there. And then, of course, you have a whole set of startup investments that are happening outside of the technology areas, where we're seeing really cool stuff been done in destinations to also support, say, local employment, etc. that, is not even touched here, but is still vital to this sector.
Okay, wonderful. Well, we are out of time. Thank you so much for sharing those insights related to opportunities for the industry. Nina and Evgeni, thank you very much.
It was a pleasure. Thank you.
Mitra.